do it sometime today. Little song service so we can discuss things on what we're doing as on Sunday and Wednesday nights. You ready? Yeah, it should be on. Okay, can you hear me now? All right, good deal. I am on. That might be better for since everybody sits back here. Well, good morning. Good morning, Billy. Good to see you. We still got Jerry Schmidt to remember. Any news from Kyla? Or
She really sounded a whole lot stronger yesterday versus 3 or 4 days ago.
So you've talked to her on the phone and.
She really just sounded like Jerry 5 days ago. We barely understand.
Wow.
Got company, so that's good.
Two sisters? Okay, is she still discouraging us visiting? Do not visit.
Even if she's well, do not visit Jerry Schmidt.
Okay. Jerry Schmidt does not want to be visited, but phone calls are.
Yeah.
Okay, and you'll have the phone number sometime.
There is a number, but it's not her number. It's kind of an awkward thing. She's supposed to be getting her phone. If she gets it, then for sure we'll put the number up. But right now, let's just.
Okay, for right now, we'll just go through you and continue to pray.
Billy.
All right, Billy. Oh yeah, Billy. Yeah. Let's see. Hershey's are traveling to Texas, and if I understand, Wednesday is their anniversary. Tomalita.
Oh.
I don't think you're on, Leonard. Okay, we'll try again. Huh? You can now? No. No? Sound guy.
Yeah, good question.
Leonard's having a little trouble hearing.
So am I.
I'll call her today. I'll find out how she's.
Hello, hello, hello. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Are you really sure this is going to work? He'll keep working on it. Okay, Brandon and Rachel are out of town. Tomalita out of town. I can't think of anything else.
I can't. On Jerry, it's a Y at the end.
Oh, why? Okay. Thank you. Cortez Ladies Day, information's in the foyer. Denise and I will be traveling next Sunday. Coming back from Fort Collins, so.
Wednesday.
We leave Wednesday, but we come back next Sunday, so we'll be traveling both days.
What's the news?
You're gonna miss Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
What's the word on? She's stronger and feeling better. They're working on getting her own telephone so we can call her directly. But discouraged. We're discouraged to go visit her directly. But cards and calls. And Steve will get a phone number, I'm understanding.
And the address would be, where is she?
And this lady lives a secret life.
Okay.
Billy's detective skills, he wouldn't have this for.
So we're still working on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a number, but I'm not sure if it's still the right one.
Okay, so Billy, if you really want a number, Billy may have one. And
274-3311.
Well, I'd just like to know what the address is so we can send a
Address,
card.
we're doing pretty good for that number right there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna tell you.
274-3311. Okay.
Creed
No
is
problem
having
today.
a women's Bible study on Philippians on September 29th.
Creed, September 29th, also having a women's Bible study on Philippians.
Philippians, yep. From 9 to 11:30, there will be a potluck brunch afterwards.
All right.
Information if they want to contact them and find out, so. I'll get more info about that for us.
You said 9 to 11:30?
Yes, sir.
With lunch.
Potluck.
Okay. All right. Are we good?
No potluck today, but on the 30th, we will.
Oh, yeah.
It's already.
This has to connect you, it has to be on specific.
So September 30th, it's the fifth Sunday. Yeah, Creed will be here, and we'll have our monthly potluck then instead of today. And this evening we're planning a song service, and then we'd like to discuss with you what you'd like to do on Sunday nights and Wednesday evenings to kind of guide what fills a need within our little congregation here. So, Janet.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not, yeah.
She's going to take her test for citizenship tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Ooh, Miriam is going to take her citizenship test tomorrow morning. I think that's worth praying about.
She's where, she just hopes she passes it.
Okay.
Well, they can take it.
All right.
Our congressmen and senators would do well to study that test. They open their eyes.
It's a tough test, I've heard.
Tough, and it's also seeing just how far that they don't give a flip about what.
Yeah, it's a tough test. All right. Well, Steve, would you lead us in an opening prayer? Yeah, of course. Here you go.
Here, I think it's working. Brother in heaven, we just thank you and praise you for your just a beautiful day you've given us. Just a marvelous time of the year here in the Fall in the Valley. We're just thankful for that time you've given us and this time of the year. Pray that Jerry would continue to improve. Very thankful for her improvement. Also ask that Denise would get good news on Bonnie this afternoon and her treatment. Also ask your Father that you would be with Miriam tomorrow. Just calm her nerves and just she knows what she needs to do, and she just knows it just needs to give it back to him. So we just pray that this time tomorrow that we'll have some good news. Also, dear Father, we are thankful that Roger and Diane have arrived safely in Oklahoma, that you would be with them as they begin to set up their new home there. As I ask now, to be with us, help you look into your great and powerful word. In your Son's name we do pray. Amen.
Thank you. Oh yeah, thank you. So Jake and Leslie will be here with the kids. Ooh, good deal. Good deal. Okay, what are we studying? What's it based on? The what? The Ten Commandments. Okay. All right. So, what's my base verse? You'll never get this one. Deuteronomy chapter 4. In me so that you may follow them in the land you enter to take possession of it. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations who will hear about all these decrees and say, surely this is a great and wise, understanding people. What other nation is so great as to have their gods near them in a way that the Lord our God is near us whenever we pray to him? And what other nation is so great as to have such righteous decrees and laws as this body of laws I am setting before you today? So, we're talking about morals, talking about character, the things that set us apart from the rest of the world. But what else do they do? Pardon? A beacon. Yes, they are a beacon. Anything else? Gives us hope. Good. Why do we follow laws? Billy? Why do you follow the law?
Because it's the law.
Because it's the law. Right? Have you ever been told it's that way because I said so? You've either heard it from your parents, you've heard it from your teachers, you've heard it from your boss. Is that a good enough reason? Well,
It should be, yeah.
when God says it, that should be enough. And that's what we're going to kind of look at today. A university once handed out the 10 Commandments on little slips and said, put them in order. 90% of them got them reversed. Is that important? You better say yes. The first 4 commandments deal with God, our relationship to God. The other 6 deal with our relationship with one another. And so when the 10 Commandments were presented to these guys, they put, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not covet, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. They put those first, and they put God's second. But God didn't put it that way when he laid them out on those stone tablets, did he? We needed to have a basis for us to accept these 10 Commandments just because God said so. And the very first one gives us the why. Why should we obey these commandments? Why should we listen to this code of ethics that God has given us and apply it to our lives? I am Jehovah. So think about it. When you were taught about sex, and your minister or your parents or your teacher said, sex outside of marriage, don't do it. What were the reasons they gave you?
It's wrong. God said so.
Huh?
God said so.
Rarely. Rarely. Usually it was, you're going to get somebody pregnant. You're going to get a disease. Or it's going to ruin your reputation. And those were the reasons they were given it, right? Isn't it enough just to say, because God says it's wrong? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at with our first commandment here today. The only motive that we need is that we are subjects of a king that expects purity, that expects holiness. So, character begins with God. We're used to saying love begins with God because God is love, right? We're used to saying holiness begins with God because God is holy. We're used to saying God or life begins with God because God is life. Well, character also begins with God. He's the foundation, He's the author. So, if we didn't have this belief ingrained within us, Billy, Denise, imagine this scenario. It's a snowy day. You're leaving home, 5 o'clock in the morning, and your car slides into another parked car as you're pulling out of the parking slot. Nobody around. What do you do? What do you do? Why?
What you're supposed to do,
Why?
because the other person's car needs to know why it was banged up.
But to tell that truth is going to put you in a jam, isn't it? You're going to have to pay for the repair of his car, or your insurance has got to pay for the. You're going to end up paying for it because your insurance is going up. I tell you this because I did it. Okay. Isn't it a whole lot easier just to nobody's looking, just leave? But why don't we do that? Because we believe in a God that says that's wrong. Because we're subjects of a God that says that is wrong. To just leave somebody like that. Huh? Snowy tracks can be followed. Or you're cashing out at Walmart or Chili's or something like that, and the cashier gives you too much change. What do you do? Do you say, hey, this is yours? Or do you just say, bonus? A windfall?
Tell them, I'm going to give it back to you because I don't want you taken from me. I mean, it could be they made a mistake and you'd want your money.
But within us are these morals that our parents, our teachers have put in us, and we do it because it's the right thing to do. Okay? So, let's go to Exodus chapter 20, where the Ten Commandments are. Verses 1 through 3 is the first command. And the God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. Shouldn't the first commandment says you shall believe in me? You ever thought about that?
It's taken for granted.
He's taken for granted, isn't he? Actually, every person has a God. The question is, what is it? Or who is it? So what's your definition of God? Or a God, little g?
You owe allegiance to.
Okay, allegiance? I don't know if I'm spelling that right. What do you think, Austin? What's a God? Who's a God in somebody's life? What makes something a God to somebody?
Something you covet above all else.
Ah, priority. Something you put above everything else. All right. Does that sound reasonable? Actually, that's a very good description. That's an excellent description. That's what we put above something we put above everything else. whatever takes first place in your life. Okay? So, the question becomes, does the God of your life, is it the true God, big G? Or is it a false God, little g? Does that make a difference? All right. Let's go back to my examples. If the God in your life is a little guy called that, when you slide into that car and nobody's looking, what does the little dollar sign tell you to do? Drive off. If your God is this God, what does your morals tell you? Suck it up and fess up. Sticky note. Yeah, exactly. So, God declares that He will not accept any other place other than first place within our lives. Would you say that?
Makes you a slave. Big G God is a relationship and frees you.
Very good. Very good. Like we talked about last week, so many times we look at the Ten Commandments as some sort of a ball and a chain. And actually what it is a declaration of independence and freedom. Because these people had just come out of slavery. They understood that very well. And God says, I'm taking you into, you're on the breadth of entering a new land that's going to be yours. I want to show you how to live within this land an abundant life. How to get the most. How to be the happiest. How to be the most grateful. And that's what the Ten Commandments are opening up to them. So, I would submit to you, though, without this first commandment, there's no need for the other 9. Because this is the one they're built on. This is the foundation.
The authority or credentials in order to make the other 9 valid.
Exactly. So if I don't accept God's rule, if I don't accept God's credentials, what do I care what He says about stealing? What do I care that He says about coveting? What do I care what He says about the Sabbath? Because I haven't given Him that preeminent place within my life. Okay? I don't care what the rules are in Russia. Why?
Don't live there.
I don't live there. I'm not Russian. I am American. And I care about these laws and the rules that we've imposed upon ourselves. So, within our heart, people say there's this throne, right? There's a throne within your heart. And what does the throne represent? What does a throne represent anywhere?
Royalty.
Royalty.
Supremeness.
Supremeness. Seat of power. Rulership. Okay? Now, have you ever seen a throne room with 2 thrones?
King and queen.
King and a queen, but who's the big one?
No, the rich got the queen and the little guy, not always.
Yeah. But when you think about the original king things like that, it was the one ruler. They're not a 2-seater, right? Remember the outhouses with 2 seats? Troy. So there's only one person that can sit upon that throne. There's only one thing that can sit upon that ultimate power throne. And we have to decide who's it's going to be. So, What's our choices? Good. For a Christian, it's God.
For American, it's America. For Russian, it's Russian.
Okay. Who's the other person that usually sits upon that throne? Me. Right? Which one's it going to be? God or me? Satan doesn't mind that we believe in God as long as he doesn't occupy the throne of our heart. Would you believe it? Would you say that that's a truism? Does Satan believe in God? He believes there is a God, but he doesn't have the control of his heart at all. So with this me, we can put many things there. We can put our job, we can put our spouse, we can put our children, we can put our church. We can put a political system in there. And God says, no, I want to be first. And all these other rules I'm going to give you are dependent upon that. Just like a keystone, you ever seen those stone arches? The very stone at the stone at the top, that kind of a wedge-shaped one, it's called the keystone. And that's the one that supports and sets the whole arch in order. And if it's not there, the arch falls. So, if I don't have this one in place, the fourth commandment tells me to set aside a day of rest or honor to God. If I don't have that, I don't care. But if I do have that, what's it telling me? It's saying, don't let work be your God. What about the one about adultery? What's that one really saying? Don't let sex be your God. You kind of see how they all key off this one? We've got to have a God. We all do, one way or the other, whether we call it that or not. Okay? So, what about do not steal or do not covet? What's he saying? Don't let things be your God. Because you'll do sinful things to serve that God. If things are my God, I'm going to steal. If things are my God, I'm going to covet. If sex is my God, I'm going to commit adultery. You're thinking something, Steve. No. So he's calling for ultimate domination. Exodus 34:14, do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. You ever heard God named jealous? Normally we give that a bad connotation, don't we? But there is a holy jealousy. God is jealous to be your God. I've got a covenant with Denise, right? Symbolized by this little ring here. What's that covenant? That all our affections are going to be for one another. I am jealous of that covenant. Because if she or I would break that covenant, there's the end of the relationship, right? God has made a covenant with his people, and he is jealous to maintain it. And this is a good jealous, because he wants us to be his. He wants us to be a full life. He wants us to have an abundant life, but through him, not what we think another God can do for us. So, back to Exodus 20, verse 2. I am the Lord. He's establishing his credentials.
His name.
He's reaffirming his name. What is God's name? What is God's personal covenant
He
name?
said, I am the great I am, so I am who I am.
I am. I am who I am. I will be who I will be. We call, and then the Lord, capital letters, what's that stand for? Yahweh or Jehovah? So he's reestablishing who he is. Do these people, have they met Yahweh and Jehovah? Where are they right now as these things are coming about, being instituted?
Smoky Mountain.
A Smoky Mountain, Mount Horeb. What's going on the top of that mountain? Dark cloud, lightning, peals of thunder. Turn to the end of that chapter, verse 20. Or chapter 20, verse 18. When the people saw the thunder and the lightning, and they heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us, or we will die." There was a demonstration of God's power and awesomeness unlike anything they'd ever seen. They'd already been through the plagues where God protected them. They'd already been through the Red Sea where God saved them from the pursuing Egyptians. They'd already been in the desert where God provided them manna and quail and stuff like that. They'd seen the pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke leading them. And so they knew he protected them, but they are deathly afraid of him now. They have a new respect for him. So he is definitely reestablishing who he is. What else is God? What else has God done? Has God done anything?
Rock, the earth we're standing on is spoken into existence by him.
He created the universe with just a word. Is that awesome? Is that powerful? Very much, yeah. Colossians. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rules or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Not only did he create the universe, he keeps it in order. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn among the dead, so that everything in him may have supremacy. Holds it all together. He is the I am. I am that I am. What does that kind of indicate? He is, he was, he always will be. God never changes, right? If God changed, if God was mutable and changeable, what would that say about his laws? What would that say about his ethics? They would change too, right? The Supreme Court was asked to define obscenity a few years back. You know how they defined it? Obscenity is whatever the local community considers obscene. Has that changed? Just look at the movie ratings. All right? Can you think back a few years to what would have been an R-rated movie back then? Now it's considered PG at worst. All right? We change. People change. But God doesn't. And because God doesn't change, His laws don't change. That gives us a constant barometer, that gives us a constant compass. He is unchangeable. So God says stealing is wrong. Will stealing always be wrong? Yes. God says adultery is wrong. Will adultery always be wrong? Yes. God says murder is wrong. Will murder always be wrong? Yes. Whereas if it's up to us, those things fluctuate. Those things change. And then we're no longer a wise and understanding people, as Moses called us to be in Deuteronomy. All right. I am the Lord your God. What does that indicate? Your. Billy, I am the Lord your God. He's mine. Mine. So in the original language, this is singular. Oops, singular. It's not plural. It's not referring to the whole nation of Israel. He's not saying, I am the God of Israel. He's saying, I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Moses. I am the God of Joshua. I am the God of Billy. I am the God of Troy. I am the God of Sadie. And he's bringing it down from this big level and trying to do something personal. Think about George Washington. What's he considered? Father of our country. He did some wonderful things, right? Do you love him? Do you try to model your life after him? Not particularly. We appreciate what he did. All right? There was a man named Tommy Crawford. He gave Curtis Crawford life. He protected Curtis Crawford. He raised Curtis Crawford. He invested in Curtis Crawford. Curtis Crawford lived in his home. Does that change the way I act and the way I am? Yeah. A large part of who I am is because of my father. Not because of George Washington, the father of my country, but because of Tommy Crawford, my father. And God says, I don't want to be, I am the God of the nation, but I want to be your God. I'm the one that raises you. I'm the one that protects you. I'm the one that invests in you. And because of that, how's your feeling towards him compared to some nebulous God of a nation? It's personal. I loved my father. I wanted to obey my father. Why? Because he loved me. Because he invested in me. And that's the kind of relationship he's talking about here, is to be your personal father. And with God, his love is as unchanging and as constant as the ethics that he's presenting for us. And that moves me to want to obey him, because he is God. He's my personal God. All right? So I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, delivered you from slavery. Again, we're working on these credentials. So we've got a God that never changes. We've got a God that's personal. We've got a God that delivers. Is he still delivering? You bet your bibby. Us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption and forgiveness of our sins. God delivers. Another credential. I've done these things for you. So that establishes that. So, who is sitting on your throne? Who's the king of your life? There was a camp retreat for Christian kids. And the counselor was trying to get the kids to talking and interacting and stuff like that. And he says, I'm going to ask them a simple question. He says, what's fuzzy and gray and eats nuts? All right, they're out in the middle of the forest, right? And those kids can't come up with the answer. And he's going, fuzzy, gray, and eats nuts. Everybody knows this one. This one little girl raises up her hand. He says, well, it sounds like a squirrel, but I want to see it's God. Right? When I ask a question, who's on our throne, we know what the right answer is. But is it the truthful answer? So one guy suggested, okay, let's not ask that question. Let's not ask who's first in our life. Let's ask, what's second in your life? Is it your job? Is it your spouse? Is it your kids? Is it making money? Find out what's second in your life and keep an eye on it. Because that's what's really competing for this spot right here. When you're running a race and you look behind, you don't look at something that's way back there. You don't look at last place, do you? You look at who's in second place if you're out in the lead. That's what we should be doing, keeping an eye and our thumb on what's in second place. Because that may actually be who our God is. And we got to be careful not to allow it to be so. That's all part of this. Who's going to sit up there on that throne? What's that competition? So, somebody once made the thought, all right, if you want to see and keep God up on your throne, there's one way to do it. It's that the old acronyms, right? And they say, go with first. F, what's the focus of your life? What do you think about and what do you consider the majority of the time? What occupies your heart when you're doing some mindless task? When you're mowing the lawn? When you're washing the dishes? Who or what do you think about? Because that tends to be the focus of your life. Another aspect of a focus is how do you look at things around you? How do you look at people around you? Is it through a God lens? Or is it through a my lens? If I look at somebody that's kind of ornery and mean and stuff through a God's lens, what do I see? A fellow sinner. Somebody that needs some understanding. If I look through it through a Curtis lens, what do I see? Well, he's just a bad person. Focus is a little different, isn't it? Deuteronomy 6:7, impress the commandments on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. We don't do that very often, do we? When we get together, what do we talk about? Weather, market, family. Not bad things, but if our focus is God, we'll focus there. I stands for income. Our values are often indicated on what we spend our money on. So everybody take out your checkbook, pass it to the person on your right, and let them see where you spend your money. What your concerns are. Is it taking care of other people? Is it contributing to God? Or is it all me, me, me? Deuteronomy 14:23 from the Living Bible. The purpose of tithing is to teach you to always put God first in your life. I thought it was just to contribute to the work of the church. No, it's to teach us too. Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Our relationships. 1 John 4:20, you cannot hate your brother and love God. If we harm our brother and steal or murder a lie, we are actually violating the first commandment because we're not loving God. Because 1 John tells us you can't love God and harm your brother. S stands for security. Who or what do you turn to when you first need help? Matthew 6:33 tells us that if we worry too much or worry about many things, look at what is really on the throne of your heart. Is there something in your life that if you lost it, you would be utterly bereft and not able to go on? When I was in school, there was a couple of teachers, and one of them was killed in a car wreck. And his spouse committed suicide within a week. Why? Because her spouse was on the throne of her heart. And there was no way she could see herself going on without him. If we lose our job, are we utterly without an anchor? If we lose our health, are we utterly without an anchor? Because those things come and go. They can't stand up to the test of time. They can't stand up to the storms of life. Only one thing can, and that's God. Where's your security? And T stands for time. Besides looking at your day register or your check register, look at your schedule. If I came up to Denise and I said, Denise, I am utterly going to be faithful. I'm utterly going to commit myself to you one day of the week. What would Denise say? You don't really love me. But that's what we do with God. We don't put time in our appointments for Him every day. So is He truly on the throne of our heart? I have a problem with that one. So this first commandment is the keystone to everything else. God establishes His qualifications. We establish who's the ruler of our heart and that we care and that we love Him enough to obey what's going to follow. Back when ships first came out and they had GPS and all that stuff, they had compasses on these. And when the iron ships came out, they had 2 compasses on that ship. One was down on the deck where the guy that's steering could kind of watch it, and then they had another one up on the tallest mast. And every once in a while, a sailor was sent up there to check the compass on the tallest mast. And somebody once asked the captain, why do you have 2 compasses? And he says, well, the one down here that we're going by most of the time is affected by the engines. It's affected by the electronics. It's affected by the metal of everything around us. And it's not always right. So we climb up to this one that's always pointing true north. We're too easily affected by everything around us, the noise, the distractions, the changing morals and ethics. God says, come up and check out the true compass. I am God. Don't worship or put anyone before me, and I'll get you home safe. So, appreciate that. Most important commandment of all.